I can say goedemorgen iedereen. After all these years, I think that's about it. So I continue indeed in English. Thank you. Well, I believe that we all have. I believe that we all share the idea that food and cooking lies in the heart of every household. And although we have a good understanding what plants, because the plants will be focused on my presentation, what plants we used in terms of what types, what species, we understand much less how they were processed, prepared, and consumed. That's why we are together here to bring those secrets of prehistoric cooking together. And I need this. Oh yeah, I do need this. And I also believe that everyone must have experienced the burning of food while cooking at least once in their lifetime. And it was no different in prehistory. And the evidence of this, I would say, unfortunate cooking events is encrusted now on pottery shards in the form of those layers of charred organic residues, as we refer to them, of food crust or ankoeksel, if you wish. And when food residues are preserved, they are found firmly attached to either the interior or exterior surface of the pot shards. As one could imagine, food can burn inside the pots, but it can also cook over the rim and then ends up on the outer wall of the pots. And as such, the food crusts are considered to reflect original vessel or pot contents and one of the last cooking events. And that's what we heard already from Tanya. That means that we don't lie to you. We all share the same idea, right? And now, food residues does provide an excellent source, I would say, of information about the daily cooking practices, as they can tell us how people prepare their everyday meals, what foods were cooked, and in some ideal cases, indeed, what pots were even used for what kind of foods. And in some cases, the meals likely reflect the function of the sites. That's what the archaeologists are very much attracted to understand the function of the site. Well, my role in the study of organic residues is SEM analysis, which will also be the main focus of my contribution to this Kennisdialoog. And the second main focus is the plant component, which naturally matches me being an archaeobotanist. Well, the first step would be sampling of the residues. And during this process, small fragments of residue are detached and mounted on SEM stubs, with carbon cementum being the glue agent. And for reliability, I always take multiple subsamples from the residue area. And the stubs are, how come? Oh yeah, no, this one. The stubs are ready to be taken to the SEM, in this case the RCE SEM lab in Amsterdam, already presented to Ineke excellently. And here the stubs would be coated with gold, preferably, as sometimes we could even catch that motion of spouter coating in the form of this purple rain of plasma. And after this, the specimens would be ready for SEM session. And why SEM is absolutely essential in analysis of organic residues? Well, mainly because it always allows for the identification of often very tiny plant particles and often to species level. Sometimes we see also the animal remains. And that all this survives the process of food preparation and cooking, and now they are preserved in those organic residues encrusted on pottery. And understanding the food crust means understanding the cooking practices, food processing before cooking, and mixing of various components. And to illustrate this, I have selected few case studies, mainly on Neolithic sites or from Neolithic sites, which I'm about to share with you. With the first case study is the Middle Neolithic Trechterbeker settlement site in Oldenburg in Schleswig-Holstein, Germany, where I must say that it is not always that preservation of food crust is as excellent in Oldenburg site. And the particles of cereal grains were already observed under the binocular microscopy, but the true secrets revealed only under the SEM. And that's where we are moving on now to. Well, under the SEM, various grain tissues were observed. Pericarp, or outer grain wall, if you wish, or the bran. Then the aleurone layer, and this one is very important in diagnostic, and this layer holds the main protein content of the grain, and then the starchy endosperm, which looks like the solid masses of carbon. And here, the aleurone layer is composed of single layer, marked for you, and together with other diagnostic tissues indicates that the presence of emmer grain. But the SEM, all right, the same results show the presence of emmer grain in multiple pots. But what we found particularly fascinating is the aleurone cells have a very thin walls, and that was very peculiar. And they are marked for you by the red arrows on the right side. And this will indicate that sprouted grain was used. And sprouting is actually a natural biochemical process activated by when grain is exposed to moisture and warm temperature, warm. And sprouted grain has several advantages for humans. For example, it increases the nutritional value of the grain, but also food prepared from sprouted grain has a distinctly sweet flavor due to the conversion of starches into simple sugars during the fermentation, during the sprouting process. And however, grain germination is also a key step in preparation of malt, which, as we know, is the essential ingredient in beer brewing. I'm not saying that we do have evidence for Middle Neolithic brewing in Schleswig-Holstein, because we do not have evidence for fermentation. I'm only saying that sprouted emmer grain might have been used to cook a porridge-like food, or perhaps malt-like drink. That's as far as we go. But it seems that not only sprouted emmer grains were on the table in Oldenburg, where these small charred seeds, rounded seeds, were embedded in yet another food crust. And under the SEM, it was clear that these are actually grains, no seeds, and more specifically unripe or milk-ripe barley grains. And the SEM images reveal the presence of multi-layered aleurone, also marked here to you by red arrows, which are diagnostic features in determination of barley. What is also observed in SEM images is the inner portion of the grain, thus the starchy endosperm, has collapsed during charring, likely to the high moisture contents. And the small size of the grain and high moisture level both suggest that it was not any barley grain that was used, but unripe or milk-ripe barley. Thus, that means that ears must have been collected when still green. Well, in this pot, we have something else. We have emmer grain cooked together with fat hand seeds, as many fragments were also embedded in the residue matrix. And these seeds are rich in protein, and we would think that there was probably intentional addition to this emmer-based dish rather than accidental addition of those seeds. Well, now I would like to move on to Netherlands and move to my next case study, which is cooking in late Neolithic Vlaardingen culture pots at the Vlaardingen site, located on a levee in the Dutch Rhine-Maas Delta. What is embedded in matrices of many service residues from Vlaardingen sites are the stems of a herbaceous plant. And the amount of parenchyma suggests succulent stems, likely hollow or tubular. Also, groups of xylements are observed, and in some residues, like this one here, The stems were actually clustered together, as to be seen in the upper right SEM image, suggesting they made up a significant portion of this prepared food. Well, likely, some of this crust revealed more diagnostic features. And here, the epidermal tissue, which is the very outer layer of the plant stem or any organ, outer layer, was exposed, showing this very characteristic V-shaped ends of the long epidermal cells on the lower right SEM images for you, which together with vascular tissue indicate that stems of one of the allium species, likely wild chives, were used in cooking. But that's not all. The greens of the wild chives were likely used to flavor some other food, the fish that was cooked in these flattening pots, as many pots and multiple occurrences of fish scales were revealed under the SEM. Thus, fish cooking with the addition of allium greens seems to have been a common dish found in truly many pots prepared on this site, and possibly reflects the function of this site as seasonally occupied place or encampment where fishing and hunting, that's what we know also from animal remains, were prominent activities. Where I decided to use the Till Meadow as a case study on early Neolithic Swifterband food residues because it actually allowed us to specify which pots were used for which types of food. And we studied a fairly large We studied a very large assemblage of food crust from this site, and this is one of these cooking events where cereals, emmer grain for that matter, were prepared in a small pot. Where interestingly, in Meidel, the emmer-based dishes were cooked only in small pots, some of which were kugelbecher's. And this would suggest that cooking grain in Meidel had a significance and was done in specially chosen pottery. Well, to display these precious small pots, I'm presenting here the best preserved example from the Dutch Swifterband context. And this is the Bischheim Kugelbecher, which was found at P14 on Hochland. In Meidel, interestingly, not only were cereals cooked in the pots, but some of the larger pots were actually used for cooking fish, occasionally with addition of green plants. Well, my final case study is about food cooked in the vessels, but found as charred, isolated amorphous lumps in the Iron Age cremation grave in Vansum. Yeah, how could this have happened then? Well, where the lumps actually represent porridge-like food, not bread, made from emmer grain, as indicated by inner microstructure and grain particles embedded in the lumps. Well, this porridge from emmer grain was likely part of funerary meal or feast. It would have been placed on a wooden or other organic bowl and added to the funeral pyre, causing it to combust during the cremation of the body. The resulting charred lumps were then gathered, along with the pyre debris, and deposited in what later became grave number 4 in Vansum. Well, this example is actually beyond allowed number of case studies, but I thought I really like to show you this shirt from the late Neolithic Steinhof, also flooding and tradition, with what is clearly a reparation hole. This example illustrates that not all plant material that is embedded in the food crust actually represent the food that was cooked in the pot. It seems that here, the remains of the highly fibrous stem which was sealed in the reparation hole are not associated with food that was cooked in the pot, but more likely with the hole. A herbaceous stem would have been rather used as a bonding material, kind of raw perhaps, than a food ingredient. And this is illustrated for us by Kelvin Wilson in one of his sketches for our ongoing Putting Life into the Late Neolithic Houses project. And I say thank you for listening, and please never wash the shirts, always mind the organic residues. You can wash them, but not with the brushes. Wash them, yes, because we don't want mud on them, but not with the brushes. Thank you.